Hi and welcome. And today I have Dr. Neela Sandal from the Atma MD. I don't know whether I'm saying this clearly enough. The Atma ATMA MD. And that's his channel for this clinic that he has. But he's also been doing some Ren reactions. So that's where I'm diving in. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And to anybody that's watching, we've had to sort of shuffle schedules and different things like that. So it's really grateful that you've shuffled and fit me in.
We're communicating across the pond here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we won't mention what's going on your side of the world. We'll just stay in Renland for a little bit. So, now, I've heard that it was your social media manager that said, hey, watch Ren.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, do you think you should have had more warning or more information?
No, I think it was great. You know, he's such a heartfelt artist. And it is naturally very much in line with my own philosophy. You know, the things that he's kind of poking holes in and drawing attention to, I endorsed 1,000%. Like, yes, we need people talking about this. And so I was very, very pleasantly surprised when my social media manager, Eliza, was initially like, hey, I want you to do this reaction video. I was like, I don't know if that's like my thing. And then upon watching it, I was like, oh, this guy's stellar.
Yeah. Had you done other reaction videos before Ren then, or was she just brought him up?
No, actually, yeah, he was the first one that we brought up. And I think it was mostly because of the topicality of it.
Yeah. That's how I found him too. I was seeing a counsellor. I'd been diagnosed with chronic fatigue. And she said, go listen to this person who's a rapper, an artist. I thought, I don't really think that's my scene at all. But then, so I put it off a while. But when I did find him, I was relating to the voices and the inner dialogue of it all. So I found that completely fascinating. Anyway, I'm talking about myself too.
No, it's great. No, yeah. It's so cool to have stumbled across this community. You know, after we did our first reaction video, we had this huge response. We're like, oh, well, this is lovely. Like, we can have a real dialogue with people about these health issues. And, you know, I would love at some point, I kind of have it on my mind. I'd love to kind of tag Ren at some point and be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's dig into these things a little bit as well. He's such a bright and shiny voice and advocate for these things. It's just very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether you know much about his world. I'm fairly new to it. I fell into it by commenting about the reaction videos. I just enjoyed watching the reaction videos and I was a bit embarrassed about it and did a video about it. Well, I've forgotten what I was going to say now.
That's honest of you, though, to kind of bring up the ground rules.
No, what I was thinking is that I'm fairly new to it. And he was talking about, he was talking about that he was advised not to talk about his illness and not to talk about those things because that would harm, I don't know, nobody would be interested and different things like that. And he said, no, I can be an advocate for this. I can be somebody who talks about it. And it really impacted me that particularly that it was a young guy talking about it.
Yeah. There's no substitute for authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, we live in an era where there's a nigh infinite amount of data and material out there.
Yeah.
The only thing that really makes a splash, given all the stuff that's available, is real authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, especially with the onslaught of AI here. You know, there's literally now the potential for an infinite amount of material. What really makes a difference? Well, the human connection. Who is this person? What is their speciality? What is their pain? What makes them unique? What is their strength? And those are the people that people are going to gravitate to. It's like, oh, that's worth watching. It's not AI generated or sort of mainstream commercialized stuff. There's plenty of that.
Yeah. I like some of the commercial. I like it. It's got its place. And then they use the phrase scratching an itch you didn't know you had. So that's part of the fans have taught me that. But anyway, what I was hoping to do is talk a little bit about, I've seen your high Ren reaction and I've seen your also the chalk outlines, but I wanted to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
If you don't mind. I'm kind of picking your brain.
Yeah.
I noticed in the comments for the high Ren, there was a little bit of a pushback from a few of the fans saying, oh, he didn't realize it was actually an illness and a different things. I really liked that you were normalizing it. You used the word about people pathologize things, like the arguments and the discussions between yourself. But I really liked, that was my take on it, that, oh, that's my voice too. I mean, I don't get so nasty with myself, but I definitely have a good me, bad me conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's just normal. That's physiological.
yeah,
You're exactly
that's what I
right.
thought was so good. Yeah.
Mhm. And, I do think there is a lot of excess
Yeah. That,
pathologization, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah, of, people having this internal dialogue, and we see this at its
Yeah.
furthest extent in, cases of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
There's actually some very fascinating studies on schizophrenia showing that people who are unconsciously coached to be antagonistic or self-defeating or self-deprecating about the existence of this very strong other voice in their head. People who are taught to be fearful or in opposition to this have very bad outcomes,
Okay.
especially directly opposed to people who are taught to collaborate with those. And so
Mhm.
there's this whole sort of alternative stream of psychology and psychiatry that is saying, well, hey, how do we help people not fight these things, but integrate them
Yeah.
and say, well, this is also to some degree part of me. How do I use this for a beneficial growth in myself? And the studies are very fascinating. People have very, very good outcomes. They have dramatic diminishment of kind of quote unquote psychotic episodes or societal
Yeah.
dysfunction if they're able to just think, okay, this is another piece of me. Let me work with this. That's strange that I have this happening, but
Mhm.
it's not, it's not a bad thing. It's not a dangerous thing. It's not that I'm broken. It's that I'm unique. Something different is happening to me and I can work with that. And I find that to be an incredibly strengthening message.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because you're talking about when as soon as you start talking about schizophrenia, you're talking about actually diagnosed mental
Hmm.
conditions. And obviously, when you were giving your feedback about high Ren, you were saying there's a normality about this kind of you argue with yourself and then you integrate it and then you grow.
Hmm.
Where where is the line? Is there a line? Like,
That's a
I
great
mean,
question.
I think when you're watching it, you're thinking, what? Where am I? Am I in the normal bit or am I in the?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. One of the things that I often rail against is the lack of nuance in medicine
yeah,
as a discipline. And the
yeah,
direct answer to your question is that it's a spectrum.
yeah.
There is no threshold at which, genuinely we can say, oh, that's schizophrenic
Hmm.
or no, that's normal internal dialogue. And it's really just there's a spectrum. And not only is this a sort of spectrum between how much presence do I have to that internal dialogue, it's also a spectrum kind of on the, the X axis and then the Y axis of how do I perceive that and integrate that?
Yeah,
Am I at odds with that? Or is that something that is useful to me and I can benefit with that? And so when we think about people who are kind of, sorry for drawing, little graphs with my fingers here, but if we think about people who have a lot of internal dialogue and it's very antagonistic or they feel very antagonistic about it, then that is what gets clinically diagnosed in medicine as schizophrenia. But there's this whole
okay.
other chart that people move through and it is natural for people to move through. So it's very complicated. None of this is something that fits into a statistics system or an algorithm. And that's the thing that I bang the table about for medicine. I'm like, guys, people are unique individuals with unique goals, unique genetic inheritances, unique environmental inheritances. And all of that has to be considered to take really good care of an individual.
Yeah, yeah. I'm. You could keep talking. Keep talking. I love that you said the word nuance as
Hmm.
well, and you mentioned it in high Ren, and I was just thinking, yeah. And also, you were talking about what they say is bad Ren. You
Mm,
were saying that bad Ren was saying some true things,
right.
and also I think you pointed out that there's growth that can come from that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it's sort of the story that you then go and tell yourself from it. It's like, are you believing it or are you integrating it and saying, actually, maybe I should be trying harder at something or
Yeah. All good considerations, right? I saw that video quite a bit as someone who is taking the sort of mythological idea of integrating the shadow. And
yeah,
I don't say mythological in a sort of like, oh, it's false or fantasy. I mean, like in the mythic sense
yeah,
of the word. The integration with the shadow, of course, is something that is core to many serious disciplines and many mystical traditions.
hmm,
And this is true, right? We have these things about us that we need to grow with, not
yeah, yeah,
against or in spite of. And that's how I really saw that more as, him, playing both sides of that out loud. And we all have that. We all have
Yeah.
shadow. And again, it's nuance. It's unique to us. And to see someone have the courage to do that, first of all, is amazing. And to see someone have the courage to do that in public, as a recorded video is awesome.
Yeah.
You're like, wow.
And the skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if I have that internal voice, but I don't necessarily have language with it.
Mhm.
And so to have it really explicitly said out loud was just, for me, I found it very valuable.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
we exist in a cultural milieu that has a lot of dogmas. And we see how that affects us in so many different ways. And ultimately, if we press against those dogmas, if we consider thinking outside the box in so many different ways, that's usually to our benefit. Reality is
Yeah.
nuanced. Our cultural perception of reality is perhaps very unnuanced, but that's to our detriment.
Yeah. No. Well, I come to YouTube with a background of being very shy and wanting to express myself and
Cool.
thinking, if I find the right words, everybody will understand me.
Interesting.
How's that working out for me? Not like, And then it's kind of, you need to make friends with misunderstandings, Joanne. You need to understand that there's nuance and people will interpret it differently. I'm talking about myself again.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I had the same sort of thoughts, when you asked me what my impression was of people who had that reaction. It was kind of
Yeah.
similar. It's like, well, people are going to hear the words they want to hear. They're going to take the message that they're ready for. There's this old adage that the first step at which truth decays is communication. The idea being that there is something that is truth from our own personal experience, and it's literally impossible to fully convey that to somebody. It begins to disintegrate as soon as we try to control it and convey it to somebody, because experience is also very personal. And so when someone misunderstands us, that's inevitable. We can't perfectly convey our experience to other people. Now, poetry, I think, is the nearest that gets. If you have a very skilled poet, they're able to kind of massage the language in such a way that more people get them on average. But still, a really great poet, you think about Shakespeare, people interpret that in many different ways, right? It's sort of sporting event. Who's got the best interpretation of Shakespeare, right?
I think that's why I was saying to myself, you need to make friends with this. I'm doing a comedy writing course at the moment. It's like,
cool.
This is about misunderstandings and misdirections, different things. Talking about misdirections, you came to the conclusion before the positive spin at the end of Hi Ren. You were like, I'm really waiting for him to integrate this. I'm really waiting for him to see that it's two sides. And then how did you feel? Did you feel like vindicated or anything? Like, yes.
I felt impressed with his artistry.
Okay.
Because in my mind, I was like, man, this would just be a slam dunk if he then tied this back in together.
Yeah.
And then he just slams it shut. And you're like, okay, that was awesome. This guy is on fire.
Yeah. And he kept the nuance, didn't he? Because he wasn't saying, and the good should win and you should be positive.
Yeah.
He was like,
right. And speaking about poetry, right, that's what he's doing. Thinking about Shakespeare, there's something about British rap in particular that brings a sort of flow. And I don't know if this is just for us Americans where it kind of particularly catches our ear. But there's a flow that I find that British rappers lean into that is somehow a little more poetic than American rappers in general. Maybe I'm not a big connoisseur of rap, so maybe I'm overstepping my
neither am I. No.
But
no, I'm just figuring it out. Is there anything else about that particular experience of doing a reaction video? Because I noticed with the Ren and Chinchilla song, you seemed a lot more comfortable. Was it, okay, I know what to expect from a reaction video now. There seems to be some difference between those two.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
I mean, they're different songs, but
yeah. I don't know. I mostly just hope that it starts dialogue.
Yeah.
And probably after the first reaction video, I had a better sense of like, okay, how can I add something nice to this?
Yeah.
I don't really care for reaction videos as a, look at me thing.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, this is a very interesting situation with a very interesting artist. And there's a lot of people who are interested in this. Is there anything that I can add to the dialogue for that? And so I do kind of feel like the novelty, the sort of shock of like, okay, what is this and what am I doing wears off. And that is maybe replaced and balanced because there's value to that in a
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
We'll go, well, I think that was, or at least I hope that was balanced with the value of me being able to stimulate some conversation.
Yeah. That sounds like is this your specialist area? Or I know you're saying about holistic, so I'm
Mhm.
not sure whether you focus on a specialist area or whether you prefer to see everything as a whole.
Yeah, I definitely prefer to see everything as a whole.
Hmm.
One of the things that is true in medicine is that the principal failures of the medical system right now are philosophical. We want to reduce things into separable parts, but
Hmm.
the human experience is not irreducible, or excuse me, it's not reducible, it is irreducible. We are not a heart and we're not lungs and a kidney and our psychology. That's really intellectual shorthand that gets
Yeah.
physicians in trouble. One of my mentors described himself as a specialized generalist. And that's always stuck with me because a lot of the potency, a lot of the therapeutic relationship exists around the edges. The
Hmm.
interconnectivity of the heart and the bowels and the brain and the psychology and also our spiritual health. This is why I have the name for my clinic. I call my clinic Atma Clinic. And that's an old Sanskrit word. Atma implies the total person, the mind and the body and the spirit. And so we're a clinic for the Atma. And so, seeing someone like Ren, that is something I really love to see. It's something that is not reductionist. He's thinking
Yeah.
about, and he's complaining about, I think, very reasonably, how people are treated as sort of replaceable widgets in a system, and how they might see a psychologist as a specialist and
Hmm.
a psychiatrist as a second specialist who does the meds, but they don't know what's going on with the actual thought process. And then maybe they see a cardiologist or whatever else, and people feel just not seen in that because they're not seen. Someone
No.
sees their brain, someone sees their heart, someone sees their skin, and they're like, yeah, but does anybody see me? And the philosophical failing of medicine right now is the answer is no, nobody really pays attention to you. You have a whole bunch of siloed algorithms.
Hmm.
Where do I fit into that, as a patient? And the answer is like, oh, we can slice you into a bunch of different pieces, but that's just not good medicine.
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to get back to the Ren fans thing, but before, leading on from what you've just said, did you enter medicine with this kind of view of I would like to be going more holistic, or did you go the more traditional, I'm going to specialize? What
Yeah,
happened?
that's a good question that I maybe don't have the most succinct answer to. I've kind of
Okay.
joked about that fact often. I was raised very spiritually. Both my parents were actually monks before they met each other, and so I kind of had this inheritance of a very spiritual
Okay.
outlook on life. And then I went to med school, kind of in opposition to that. Actually, I was like, mom and dad, you guys are nuts. I know everything. I'm young and intelligent, whatever, right? And the sort of rebellious phase that people are going to get. And then when I got to med school, I started looking around, and the wonderful gifts that my parents had given me helped me understand the limitations of modern medicine. And I was like, hey, we're not serving these people. Like, there are some
Hmm.
serious problems here. What do you mean we're just going to leave that alone? Nobody understands it. It's just a lost
Hmm.
cause. Like, no, I don't think that's true. We're just not seeing the big picture here. And so then it began to just organically integrate, where I got to a place where increasingly I would push my attending physicians. And I was like, hey, I think we're missing something here. And I think I
Yeah.
became a little notorious. They're like, oh, not Neela again. You're going to push me on something I don't want to think about. I just want to be
Yeah.
in my lane and be a cardiologist. Like, well, hang on. What's going on with this? And then so then I pursued further training in integrative medicine and functional medicine. I went and trained with Dr. Andrew Weil's group in Tucson, Arizona, who's kind of the father of integrative medicine, and also have just continued my practice in the old, genuine sense of the word. Physicians used to say, "I have a practice."
Hmm.
What does that mean? It means we accept that science isn't finished and that we are continuing to advance it. And so I do a lot of continuous study, and, I've been in this field for about 12 years now, and I am super
Okay.
thrilled just to see the cultural wave starting to rise up. I mean, some of my peers are routinely on Joe Rogan now, people I went to residency with, for
Yeah.
instance. And it's just great to see people kind of finding their voice and being like, we don't accept this. I know you're the MD, but that doesn't mean that you understand me or that your knowledge of my physiology is sacrosanct. And that's just really, to me, exciting. And that's part of my own draw into starting to do social media and appearances like this, is just to kind of kindle that fire and to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it's understood what holistic, you as a holistic doctor, do you feel that that's understood?
No,
That you are no. I
not at all.
because I sorry, I was just gonna say one other word. The word respect was coming up into my mind. Not that you're aiming for respect, but the respect there was traditionally, you went to a doctor, he was an authoritative figure, there was a respect, and it was almost like an adult-child relationship.
Right.
And there's something different about holistic, which is two adults speaking. And I
Yeah.
anyway, you talk. You talk.
Yeah. No, thank you. Um, yeah, there's this term in medicine when we go through medical school now, actually all medical students, at least in the US, and this is probably true globally, I would assume, physicians are coached to not be paternalistic.
Okay.
So absolutely medicine, there was a phase where it was very adult and child. And the irony here, of course, is that even though physicians, young training physicians are coached to not be that way, the people who are teaching them have no idea what that really means. And so they end up being very paternalistic. It's still, in fact, that way, even though everyone's like, oh, I try not to be paternalistic. Like, well, they can't help it. They don't have a philosophy that allows them to have a genuine respect and relationship for their patients. There are many physicians who feel like they know everything.
Mhm.
This is an unfortunate truth. And that's why I like that term practice. It's like, hey, guys, you have a practice. You are practicing. Don't
Yeah.
tell me you have the entire corpus of knowledge. That doesn't exist. The science is not finished, nor will it be. And so there are physicians who try to have a different approach, and many of them will call themselves different things. And to your point about, is it understood what holistic means? It's kind of a branding problem. There's integrative
Yeah.
medicine, functional medicine, personalized medicine, precision medicine, regenerative medicine, all these different terms. And currently there's not enough standardization for that to really make sense for people. There are,
Yeah.
let's say, chiropractors who have a totally different style who say they do functional medicine. And so one of the things that I'm actually getting into personally is training of physicians and standardization and sort of quality control of these things, because I'm getting quite tired of patients like Ren who go, oh my God, there's maybe another thing that I can find. And they Google a functional medicine provider and they have a bad experience because they
Okay.
didn't see someone who had quality control. And that to me really gets me fired up, because I'm like, listen, I don't want people poisoning the concept here. Like, yes, this is really
Yeah.
phenomenal. Routinely at Optima Clinic, we have cases that my mainstream colleagues, and I like to keep very good relationships with all the other MDs.
Mhm.
My mainstream colleagues will call me and be like, Neela, what the hell are you doing over there? Like, how did you cure that? How did you get
Yeah.
that into remission? Things that are just conventionally thought as not reversible, we were able to reverse.
Mhm.
And so looking at people like Ren, I want people to be able to have really, really good resources for this therapeutic relationship between, what really are peers. I
Mhm.
highly value my patients' perception of their experience
Yeah.
and their research. I'm
Yeah.
practicing. And everything that I might come up with is my own assumptions. Again, talking about the breakdown of language and experience, right?
Yeah.
My assumptions of what I'm hearing. But they're the people who are closest to that knowledge. So I really have to listen carefully to them to go, okay, am I understanding this right? What can I add in?
Mhm. Yeah. In terms of speaking to your colleagues, particularly earlier on, did you ever feel it would be safer to be silent,
Oh God, yeah.
or was it just
Oh
were you
yeah.
energized to keep speaking? Or
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure,
yeah.
just conform. Neela,
Yeah.
don't bug me with this. I don't want to think about this. We're busy. You have 9 other patients to see. Go do your job. That sort of behavior early on before I started my own business to escape all that. Um, And I think it still makes MDs very uncomfortable. It certainly is possible. Again, there's no quality control. And so some people hear functional medicine and their association is with quackery, sort of lack of
Yeah.
science. Um, but the reality is that these things are reproducible. And
Yeah.
seeing the effects of these makes me want to advocate for them. And so eventually I would just lean into the science of this and start to be louder and more specific about this. And so I got to the point, um, where I feel very confident defending these things rigorously
Okay.
in a language that other MDs can hear. And I think that's encouraging to them. It helps educate
Yeah.
them. Not to say that, I'm their educator, but I want them to be educated with me or someone else. And I think patients also are able to go, okay, this is very empowering. I don't have to just put up with a doctor who talked down to me. there are
Mhm.
physicians who have a relationship. And I also like that to be an encouragement to my peers, my colleagues. Come on, guys, we should all collectively do more for our patients because our current system, frankly, sucks.
Yeah. And how do you handle the whole spirituality side of things? I'm guessing that there is some delicacy in terms of your beliefs and their beliefs and different things.
Yeah. My goal is always to empower them. Yeah, I'm not a proselytizer by any means. I just want them to be empowered. And if that relationship for them is with Christ or it's with Odin or it's with Vishnu or whatever it is, I'm like, how, and some people are also, of course, atheist. And I'm like, I just
Yeah.
want you to lean in to whatever you feel your empowerment is.
Yeah. I I read a book a while ago. I think it's called Cured, and I wish I'd searched it out for you. But he was saying about different pillars of health.
Mm.
But he was talking about, yes, there's the mental, there's the social, there's the physiological, I found that really comforting. But I think it's similar to what you're saying about the holistic, is that having a social network that you can
Mhm.
tap into is important, as well as diet, as well as
Yeah.
other things. Do you have is it broken down into pillars like that, or is it more that you're just having a conversation, or?
As far as my practice with an individual
Yeah,
patient.
yeah. So when
Mhm.
somebody comes to see you.
Yeah, usually my approach is that of a perfectionist and an optimist. And so I want to engage patients. I'm like, well, when was the last time you felt perfectly well?
Mhm.
Let's start there. And a lot of times I'm engaging patients to realize diminishment that they've normalized. A very
Yes.
simple example
Yeah.
is, well, I'm 60 years old and of course I can't run anymore. And I'll push
Yeah.
back on them. I'm like, well, why? Why would we
Mhm.
accept that? Um, And so really it's just listening to them and encouraging them to think about their health. I don't really have necessarily a sort of, pillars. We want to check all these boxes because for some people
Mhm.
that's irrelevant. And
Yeah.
so my job, as I see it, is just to really connect with the human being and figure out how I can encourage them to be in absolute maximal health. And again, some people are like, hey, I only want to go 90%. And I respect that too. I'm like,
Mhm.
we all have lives and we're busy. Let's solve the big problems if that's what we want. But then typically after they're feeling really, really good from whatever chronic illness they had, let's say they had chronic IBS or they had chronic fatigue or Lyme disease or mold illness or whatever it might be, whatever complicated illness. Once that's resolved, then we're going to have that conversation again. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
cool. I'm glad you're feeling better. How do we get you feeling even better still? What's missing?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find it does tend to be those chronic illnesses that people search you out for?
It's a mix. We actually do quite a bit of longevity work because that
Okay.
stems from that same
Yeah.
philosophy. People who want to feel like they're 30 until they're 80, that is increasingly becoming a reality. Our science is accelerating
Yeah.
very rapidly on those things. I'm not really a big believer that people will live forever, but certainly it would be, I think, a shame for us to not utilize the science of lifespan and health span to help people push as far as we possibly can.
Yeah. I was As you was just speaking, I took you off on a tangent, but I want to come back to what you were just talking about. The word empowerment came up when you were doing the Ren and Chinchilla
Mhm.
um, reaction video, and I thought that was really interesting. You were saying, "Oh, I think you were talking about they're disempowered,"
Mhm.
and you were talking about taking a medicine, and
Mhm.
that was, and I thought, well, that's really interesting that you translated what was being said in that song to, "Oh, they're disempowered," and I thought, well, I'd never really considered that, but it's kind of what we were saying, isn't it? It's about do what you're told,
Uh-huh.
take the medicine,
Yeah,
and, even if you're having a good day, you think, "Well, do I just keep taking it?"
right. Well, the reality is that people heal themselves.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we have to kind of, nudge things along in one way or another.
Yeah.
But if we say, oh, you can't heal yourself, you should just take this pill for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's never going to be that's never going to be the perfect thing for them. It might be a
Yeah.
good temporary brace for a sprained ankle, but of course you don't want to wear a brace on your ankle the rest of your life. You want to come back to perfect health. And so it's
Mhm.
not to say the brace is a bad thing. It's just should be a temporary thing. And if someone mistakenly forgets to tell you that the brace is a temporary thing, that's disempowering.
Yeah. Oh, dear me. I wish this conversation was more normalized, like you said.
Yeah.
What is the view? Sorry, I was gonna say, what's the view for the channel in terms of normalizing? Do you have a plan, or
Uh, how do you mean?
in terms of normalizing the conversation and actually are you just going to do more reaction videos, or what are you thinking?
Yeah. Our channel right now, we're looking for outreach. And so I'm really happy for opportunities like this that you've given us,
Yeah.
Joanna, just to be able to have a good conversation with people who are thoughtful.
Hmm.
Um, that is nice for our channel's engagement, of course, but also we get to have a really wonderful discussion. And that to me is a win-win. We also certainly on our channel do a lot of education that is more kind of geared
Okay.
towards my clients specifically. And again, helping them kind of think outside the box. And if anybody accesses that and feels empowered from it, I'm very, very happy for it. And then if we can find other sort of fun discussions and reactions to do, I'm thrilled to do it. So I know Eliza, she's looking over my shoulder
Yeah.
here. She's like, yeah,
Yeah, she
let's get into it. And I think
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun. Whatever I can do to bang the table and get people's attention that we need to change the philosophy of medicine and that we have the scientific tools and ability to do that, I'm there.
Yeah. And am I understanding this? When you say changing the philosophy, you're saying it's the holistic and the nuance and
Yes.
the individual.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
Rather
what you're
than the
changing.
assembly line medicine.
Right.
It doesn't
Okay.
work. It's good for acute care issues.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I think, demonstrably abysmal for chronic issues.
Yeah. So we're kind of leaning towards the fans now, because how did it feel? Did you know that you were going to have this tidal wave of fans and comments when you did a reaction?
No, I just thought I was going to, like, I will throw it out there. We'll see what happens. And so I feel very grateful to everybody for engaging and creating a discussion around it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to me that I've had some comments before in different videos, but the engagement, the types of comments that people were leaving felt like a conversation. And you're saying that that's your ideal, isn't it? That's what you're hoping they'll do.
Yeah. And I like that anytime that I post any sort of video, be that sort of raw education on a particular topic, like Lyme disease, let's say, or it's going to be a reaction video. What I'm hoping is that people start going, oh, there's something going on there. What do I, interesting. And then they're welcome to ping us and say like, hey, doc, what do you think about this? This made me think of this. Will you do a video on this? I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking now, I was late 30s before I heard the term self-efficacy. Is that the belief that something is possible for you? And I think what's happening when I see different people in the chronic illness community, we're not hearing stories of you can get better. And then people like you can get better. And so, like, how do you have that belief or even look for answers? And, if you're constantly being told, no, this is lifelong and this is how you're going to have to live now.
And this is the thing that pisses me off. This is when I start banging the table, right? Because people feel this because they go to their MD and they're like, hey, doc, is there anything I can do? And they say, no, I'm sorry, this is a terminal illness or you're going to be on this the rest of your life. And in my humble opinion, if I'll say, it's just wrong. Many of those individuals can reach cure if they work with a physician who will see them as a human being.
Yeah.
And really the reason for this, the specific reason for this, the very grounded reason for this, I'm not kind of just pontificating and philosophizing. The direct reason for this is that almost all chronic illness is misunderstood because we lack nuance. All chronic illness is actually just a sort of accumulation, a sort of blob of a whole bunch of individual issues. And if we, rather than just seeing the blob and going, I don't know, take a pill, good luck, that's it. If we look at this and we're like, well, hang on, let's pull this apart and this apart and this apart and this part and this part and this part and this part and think about it in the situation of this individual. Well, guess what? Actually, all these become very manageable. And you better believe it. If you treat all 5 of these things that make up the blob, all of a sudden the blob is gone. And, so to your question of, how do we get people exposure to this being possible? That is what I bang the table about, is like, that's why I do social media, to tell people, no, we get resolution or remission or even cure on this stuff all the time. And there are absolutely physicians and patients out there who do that. I will, of course, say right now it's not standard, which is a shame, which is why I'm out there banging the table. I'm like, hey, come on, guys, to my colleagues, come on, guys, let's do this. And to my patients and people who are my patients, demand that. Yeah, I love when patients bring their own research, and I love that patients are becoming increasingly skeptical of their physicians
Mhm.
and challenging them. That's productive. We have to keep everybody on their toes to keep them honest.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, let's light a fire under our collective butts to do a better job here.
Yeah. I think the problem is that I felt very much like a child in when I was dealing with the medical profession.
Mhm.
So I wasn't necessarily looking for answers. I was trusting the authority figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we're growing as a civilization, as a global civilization. I think it's
Yeah.
productive for people to be skeptical of their physicians. And
Yeah.
it would be very productive for physicians to be skeptical of what they know. Like, wait a minute, what is the
Yeah.
dogma here? Why was I taught this idea this way? And is there something novel? And there's a statistic that I learned back in med school, so I'm sure it's outdated. I'm sure it's more entertaining than this now. But
Mhm.
the statistic back then was that the amount of raw medical data doubles every 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm sure it's faster. Yeah.
and part of the problem is that doctors just can't keep up with that. So most doctors,
Yeah.
if they're practicing assembly line medicine, just by virtue of having to see 40 patients a day or whatever, they can't
Mhm.
think outside the box. They can't innovate. Well, what I want is I want physician innovators. And I think
Mhm.
patients want that. And they should want that. Patients should want a relationship with a physician who sees them as a human being and will innovate until they get the job done. Now, I'm not claiming to be a miracle worker. There's sometimes we hit a wall. There's limitations to our science, but damn it, we should push.
Yeah.
And I'll say to anybody who's listening to this that is like, oh gosh, you know, uh, is this a real thing? Try it. All
Yeah.
the time, physicians like myself around the world are getting results that are miraculous, considered miraculous by the system. And we're doing it scientifically. We're doing it by seeing the individual and being meticulous and applying the scientific method over and over and over again in iteration until we get the problem solved. We get the blob, we break it down into
Yeah.
pieces, and we just chase it like a bloodhound until it's done.
Yeah. I I just wanted to say from my point of view that I heard the terminology they were saying about we move from naivety to a cynicism.
Yes.
And that's how I felt. I felt like,
Mm.
yes, I was naive in the way I was dealing with medical profession. But then when I became cynical and very disappointed with the profession, that was not a fun place to
Yeah.
be. And it's like, where do I go from here?
And the answer is
And then they were
optimism.
saying that's wisdom. But
Yeah.
then there's
The
you've got to have the
optimism.
courage and the wisdom.
We have to
They don't
push.
know
Move on.
everything. Yeah.
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 And I love that. That's a brilliant way to put it. We're naive, then we're cynical, and we're next. And I would really challenge optimism.
And
Optimism through hard work.
that's the horrible place. Don't stay there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly
And
right.
I do think you can get angry and cynical
Mhm,
and they're all rubbish and nobody cares. And
mhm,
it's like you speak to people like you and you go, yes, people are caring.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm, sometimes people ask, they come through our social media and they're like, "Oh, doc, I'm in, Brazil or somewhere. Like, can I see you?" And the answer is like, "Yeah, we can find ways to make that work." There's some sort of legal challenges to that and licensing that we
Yeah.
have to kind of work around. But I like to make myself accessible as much as I can. More importantly than that, though, really my calling is increasingly becoming training physicians and
Yeah.
being the firebrand so that there's more accessibility to this. Because I think that's the real answer to your question.
Yeah.
If we can distribute this philosophy and these ideas and these, techniques to solve these problems, break things down into their pieces and start to resolve the complexity, appreciate the nuance,
Yeah.
um, then the tide will really start to turn. I think people will be able to move out of cynicism and say, "Oh, I can just Google my local Optima clinic or something." I mean, that would be a dream for
Yeah.
me if I could get quality control, distributed medicine out broadly. So I'll keep working on it with all your
Oh
guys'
my
blessings
goodness.
and encouragement.
Yeah, it's just blowing my mind a bit. I'm struggling to think of sensible questions for you because as I say, I do see that if we can name it and say, don't stay in the cynicism, you can be helped, you can find solutions, and there are other people that are willing partners to be helping you in that. So I feel like normally in the interviews I talk about Ren and I talk about the fans, but for some reason I just talked about myself way too much today.
It was a lot of fun. No, this is just a rich, this is a fertile field of conversation,
Yeah.
right? And that's one of the things I'm really thankful to Ren for generating all
Yeah.
this, right? Like we're having this conversation because of his courage to bring this
Yeah.
forward for people. And it's just that sort of leadership is really
Yes. Yeah.
admirable. You know, genuinely, I just think it's great.
Yeah. And that it's art. There's quite a few subjects that he sings and he talks about, which are actually quite difficult things to bring up in the conversation.
Yeah.
But definitely the fans, there seems to be a hunger, and it's like, yes, we want to see ourselves in art. We want to we want to give language to a lot of the things that we're feeling and experiencing. So
yeah.
But as I say, I'm very new to the Ren world. The fans are telling me stuff all the time, and and I say, oh, this is an interesting idea, and they say, oh yeah, he's done 3 songs on that, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know. But I'm not pretending to know more than I do, So
that's an adventure, right? This is just progress. When we have these conversations go, everyone kind of builds and adds their own bit, and that inspires someone else, and that inspires someone else.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's a big, giant, useful conversation that starts to challenge the orthodox, which is great.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that with the Ren fans, that some of them are saying, oh no, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to start making art, and I'm going to do that. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That just lights me up to think that they're inspired, and you see it trickle through everything.
It's that pebble dropped into the still water that then ripples out, right?
Very cool. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, where can people find you? I think they've probably found you already, but
yeah, you guys should check out our YouTube, The Atma MD on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's TheAtmamD.
Yeah.
And we'd love to see you guys there. And if you guys have any questions, please, drop us comments on this video. Please support Joanne. She's doing wonderful work. This was a delightful interview. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And let you know what they want to hear.
Yeah,
in terms of reaction videos. Yeah. Because they know the body of work much better than I do. So it'll be fun. Is there anything else that you think? Final words.
Be perfectionist. Everyone should be optimistic, perfectionists about their health. If something isn't right, demand it be right. Find the person who can do that. Do your research, push for it. And not perhaps every single thing is solvable, but most things are. So be picky. Move out of cynicism into that optimism, please.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna hit stop. Thank you very much.